Welcome to the Not Your Mama's Autism podcast, a podcast about being unapologetically human through the eyes of neurodivergent people and the communities that support them. I'm Lola Dada-Olley. This season, we've been picked up by the Alive Podcast Network, a platform dedicated to amplifying Black voices. And in this season, we hope to deliver to you a rich mix of personal stories, as well as awesome guest content in a way that we hope really resonates with you. So, with that in mind, let's get started. This is episode 2 of our season 7, and the very first episode, we were fortunate enough to have Dr. Kim Floyd on the podcast to talk about special education, assistive technology, the evolution of education over time through her eyes as an educator and an innovator. In this episode, we thought we'd bring it home, literally. So we talked about the macro going to the micro. And I have my husband, Tosan, on the podcast, and we are going to talk through our decision to take Alero temporarily, our daughter Alero. For those who may be new to the podcast, our daughter Alero is 11, minimally verbal, as we like to call her, minimally verbal, maximally opinionated. She's on the spectrum. She's also intellectually disabled. She has apraxia. So she has challenges that differ from her brother, who's 13, very verbal, considered gifted and talented. So we have 2 children on very different ends of the spectrum. So there was a season where we took Alero out of special education, and now this past fall, she returned to school. And we want to kind of talk through the journey as to why we did what we did, and some of the considerations we made, just so that other families, and particularly maybe some educators and other professionals in the education space, can understand what parents like us go through in making these type of decisions. So for a little over a year, March 2023, we pulled Alero out of special education, where she attended ABA, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech full time. So the natural question is, why did we bring Alero out of school in the first place? So do you want to start? Or I could start, and I could fly the plane, then you could land it, whatever you want.
No, we'll piggyback. We do what we do in life. I fly, you fly, we all fly, as long as it gets there. And that's not saying that we wing it. No. It's more understanding that we almost have to be very adaptable.
Absolutely.
That's one of our family's mottos and missions, is that you got to be adaptable. So at any point in time, I'm the pilot, and at any point in time, you're the pilot, and at any point in time, I'm the auto mechanic, cleaning up grease stains from the floor.
The flight attendant, all of the things.
Concierge, all the things. You do what needs to be done in order to get to where you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
But to the question of how we got to the decision to remove Alero from school temporarily. Part of it was forced. Our hand was forced. The joys of insurance that I think we've touched on other episodes, as to the proverbial, I don't know what they call it nowadays, cliff. As a child gets older, Alero is 11. As a child reaches the double digit age 10, 11, there's a proverbial pushback from the insurance companies as they seek to
wind down some services.
There's a heavier auditing of services. Questions that they ask that make me kind of chuckle is almost like, does she still have autism? I'm like, the last time I checked, autism is not like malaria or something that you,
or like a cold that you just,
cold,
yeah.
that symptoms disappear.
Yeah.
So at that point, a little bit over a year ago, a therapy provider came to us and to level set. We had Alero doing a split schedule, half day in school. Then around noon, she gets transferred to therapy, and she finishes out the rest of the day. In therapy, and we, from our decision making, thought that was the best way to go, because she could get some academic rigor at school and more life skills from home. From therapy, from occupational therapy, ABA, and what have you. Alero at that time had a split schedule where she was started out the day at school, half day of school, then right around noon, while other kids are having lunch, she gets transferred onto therapy, because we figured that it was a bit of a best of both worlds. She could get some academic rigor from school and get the more life skills, ABA, occupational therapy that she needed from the private therapy provider. But the therapy came to us and essentially told us that the insurance was pushing back as to why there was a quote-unquote part-time schedule, which, in all fairness, the time she spent in therapy was 30 hours spread across ABA, occupational speech, PT, all the therapy, which in our mind, that's a full-time schedule, but we'll leave that for a different podcast. And they essentially suggested we had to make a call. She's either full-time school or she's full-time therapy, because it was getting harder and harder to get approval from the insurance companies. So we did what we tend to do when we are faced with a decision. We, weighed all of the consequences, inputs and outputs and what have you, and figured for a 10-year-old, and the one matrix we tend to use is, would the 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old Alero be best benefited from decision A or decision B? And we came to the conclusion that it made more sense to invest more in independent living, life skills, the kind of skill set that probably came more from a private therapy avenue than a school setting. So as much as she, it was a tough call.
It really was.
We made the call to pull her into private therapy, also with a little bit of, we tend not to catastrophize decisions, if that's the right way to put it, meaning that this is the one decision that will forever be irrevocable and, would be determinant of our future for the rest of our life.
And we had to get there too. We did.
Yeah. So I say we tend not to, like we were born this way, but we have grown into not catastrophizing decisions. So we decided to take a chance, because the one thing we would always do is, as long as we do the best we can, I think we've said this mantra before, with what we know and what we have, then we are very, very okay living with the outcomes.
And along those lines, we're also looking at, because 2023, there was still effects from the pandemic, and there was some regression in Alero's life skills as a result of the pandemic and being home so much. And we wanted to put her in multiple environments, but we wanted her to be as equipped as she could be. So we felt like some refining was needed in that area too. So we thought, okay, at least for a period of time, let's explore.
Almost like an intensive.
Yeah.
you know, did dive into the things that we felt were more needful for a 13-year-old, 14, 15, 16, as life, she goes into different phases of life, which we've touched on a little bit in previous podcasts, but
we will touch upon again in future podcasts.
We'll touch upon again in future. It's balancing all those things and making a call, and not being paralyzed by analysis and the what ifs, because you give yourself grace that you will not get it 100% right. You just, because there are variables that we don't know. So that's a year-ish ago. Status quo, level set it.
Yeah, and then she was in therapy for a year, and then on top of that, we have this amazing caregiver who also doubles as a home therapist. So when Alero gets home, he helps us kind of re-emphasize those behavioral skills learned in ABA and other skills learned in speech and OT and PT. She's recently been, during this period of time, she has quote unquote graduated from PT. So that's a big win for us. So one less therapy, and she's doing well. She is learning more about her body and how it works and the importance of that as she grows older. As you know, preteen girls and all that comes with that. So that was a major priority for us in this season. And looking at that, we were happy with her progress on how far she had come, better aware of just her surroundings, better aware of self-regulation, although there's still always room for improvement. And then as she approaches puberty, those aggressive behaviors do come out from time to time, but you can tell that there is a baseline. There's more of a baseline now to help return her to center in a way that we both really think is just going to be so helpful as she grows up.
Yeah, and there were trade-offs, right? There were, let's not have anyone under the illusion that there was not a cost-benefit analysis, a trade-off. So Alero going to school meant she was out of the house by 7:20, 7:30, and was occupied from 7:30 through when we picked up from therapy, which was like 4 or 5 o'clock. So she essentially had coverage for a full workday. Alero all day therapy, and I almost want to put all day in air quotes.
Because in Texas it means something different than in other states.
Something different. Her day started at 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., which meant
Monday through Friday,
the critical hour when most meetings from a work perspective are scheduled is the 8, 9, 10 a.m. hour. One of us was running a child to therapy, and we open with our story, and our colleagues, bosses, co-workers, and what have you know our story. So and the pandemic also helped desensitize folks to me being on a call with somebody higher up and they hear a random giggling, high-pitched squeal. You're in my house.
Yep.
And this is what happens in my house. But
occasionally having to have those calls with the video off because you're dropping off your child, and they hear, I've given disclaimers at the beginning of calls saying, hi guys, my daughter's on the spectrum. I'm dropping her off in therapy, and I'm still on these calls, highly active, highly participative. It's just, it's part of our life. And we know we are very fortunate to currently be in roles where quite frankly, our work ecosystem is understanding of that, because not everybody has that. Yeah. We were able to get our daughter the critical health care she needed while still juggling some pretty demanding jobs.
Yeah. Then you make that decision that any decision will have a cost to bear, right?
Absolutely.
And our choice of the cost to bear was, quote unquote, less face time at work, in some instances. And obviously there's a financial cost to bear in terms of paying therapy providers and what have you. But at that time, given what we knew, it was the best decision for baby girl. So,
and Tosan touched on the matrix, and I give this matrix in speeches, and currently working on a book that this matrix will be in. But the matrix is, and Tosan touched upon it, are we doing the best with the information we have at the time, given the geographic and monetary limitations we have? And we do what the best we can with the information we have, and we move on. And we've learned over time not to dwell on decisions that maybe we wish we could have done differently with more information, and we just keep it. We truly, truly do keep it moving.
Yeah. You stick with your choices. It's an amplification of a quote. Lola, so one of Lola's aunts told her years ago, like, you need to act like you went to the store and bought this life. You stick with your choices and understand perspective that 95% of the choices we make in life can be reversed. Right? So don't try and make the 5% that are irrevocable, that can be reversed. But if most of life's day-to-day decisions are reversible, so if we play it out in finance, we have actually in most fields, there's a different terms: testing, piloting, sample testing, fill in the blank of those terms. If you play it out and either variable changes or the outcomes are not what you thought they were, then you start building an off-ramp off of that decision to move on to a different decision. And one thing with us, we did as one of the reasons, and we've covered this in a past episode, why we bought where we bought, and we fit into not just school district, but particular schools, is because we wanted to make sure that the not as easily reversed decision, aka buying a house in a certain place, gives us the benefit of more choices and outcomes. Right, so that we can play with this decision, which is more easily reversed. And if there is a loss, and I know I'm speaking in finance terms, it's mitigated by the fixed decision that you made 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So it's thinking that way has, knock on wood, so far so good, has kind of helped us. You put more weight on the fixed decisions and keep yourself nimble enough to pivot off of the variable decisions as they come. And that's what we did a year-ish later, evaluating the outcomes for Alero, where she's gone, the quality of therapy, what needs she has now that, were not evident when she was 10, now she's 11 plus. The need set has changed. What makes sense now? Do we keep it? The school year was about to begin. Do we bring her back to school, or do we do therapy, or do we explore the split? And we landed on, which was the crux of this episode.
Yeah, bringing her back to school.
It's time to go back to school. And about going back to school, thinking back to the fixed decisions, was done with a bit of a caveat. Knowing her ISD as probably one of the more mature settled ecosystems for special ed in this area. We actually reached out to a prior principal, a prior teacher, a special ed coordinator, to talk through what would this look like, because she would be, from an age perspective, would be
entering middle school, technically, if we were to bring her back, because last year should have been her last year of elementary school. So we asked for special permission to pull her back a year, and that was hard. But we think it was good for her because the last experience she had with school was elementary school. So for continuity purposes, keeping the autism in mind, thinking of major transitions, and moving her back to school was already a major transition. So we thought at least the elementary school setting was familiar enough that she could come back for a year, and then we can look through middle school next
year. Yeah, and not just familiar enough. We've heard and we've seen in our own life with her brother that the middle school transition is hard enough for any child.
Yes.
Neurodivergent or neurotypical. So to put what would it be, essence, a triple whammy of transitions upon a child who couldn't quite communicate to us how it made her feel, just didn't feel like the right thing to do. Was giving credit to the school district. Once they evaluated, they agreed that it made sense to almost reground her in the educational environment, give her a year, so that when she moves into the middle school environment, it's not, the shock is lessened. At least that's the hope, that the shock will be lessened from a transitional perspective. But again, it speaks back to the fixed decisions we made about choosing where we chose based on what we knew. And so far, that one decision is paying a yield.
It's holding. It's really holding. It's really holding. And so far, we're about 6 weeks-ish back into school, and she's doing really well. I believe it was the second or third day where you could tell she was like, am I really going to be here all day? But besides that, she's more vocal than she's been in a while, which is great. So that's the major part that has changed. She still has the same great caregiver who also is her home therapist. So he very much, reiterates what happens in school, and we're working on updating the IEP and finding ways to generalize those things into the home. And she still goes to speech therapy, and we're hoping to get OT, occupational therapy, back in the afternoon. So she'll be going a couple times a week straight from school to speech and OT. So at least that pediatric therapy element, the private pediatric therapy element, is still there and it's familiar to her. And we're also reintroducing school occupational therapy, school speech therapy, adaptive physical education, which she loves because she is very much a movement-based person, and music therapy, which is available in the school. So she's very much, you can tell when she gets home, when we pick her up from school, she's just so happy. And the old saying, you're only as okay as your I believe is your least happiest child or your happiest child. I can't quite remember the paraphrase, but you're something along those lines. And at least when it comes to the home front, both kids are solid and they enjoy their schools. And we are very, very fortunate to be in this position. But these are just some of the considerations that we've really looked at, some of the tires we've been kicking over the last year to 18 months. And the transition so far we are very, very happy. We recently had her first, in Texas we call it ARD, but in other states it's the IEP meeting that you have with the school administrators, principal, school therapist, and teacher. And we're definitely all on the same page. and just making sure we all do our best to reintegrate her back into school life. We'll be meeting every 2 weeks with their teacher for a more formal status report for about 30 minutes, the way we used to do in ABA, kind of looking through the 2 weeks, working through any goals she may have, ways we can generalize those goals we see in the classroom to the home with the help of our, again, amazing caregiver. It truly, truly does take a village, and we see the educators, the therapists, the principal, our caregiver, our private OT and speech therapy partners. They truly are all part of a big village. We really do view them as our village members. So that's the approach that we're taking in this season, and really all the seasons since we've gotten this double autism diagnosis from both of our babies. So, you do the best with the life you have, and we truly are taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, and do we have a crystal ball to say this will yield the perfect, quote unquote, or the most optimal outcomes? I have no idea.
No, we don't.
But there is a peace at knowing that ultimately, like you said, you made the decision based on what was known, and with the financial, geographical, time
limitations, the reality of being two people working in highly demanding corporate environments.
Yeah.
All of those things.
So, and over the last, some of the variables from those time limitations changed for us over the last 6, 7, 8 months, where our travel picked up. And you adjust and you pivot and you make sure that if there's a cost to be borne, it's not on the child. We shift. You pay the cost at sleep.
Yeah, for sure.
Actual cost, you figure it out.
Coffee?
Because coffee, exactly.
Coffee?
Unhealthy amounts. I'm speaking for myself, but you do what can be done to make sure the cost is sustainable. And it helps that you're on the same page, right?
Absolutely.
It's critical. Not just on the same page with your partner, if that's applicable, but also on the same page with the providers, caregiver, teacher. So this every 2-week alignment, it's crucial. It's going to be those 30 minutes a must have, so that everybody's expectations are aligned. We're all pushing and rowing towards the same direction, and the outcome is to give baby girl the tools she needs so that the 16-year-old is better equipped, and the 18 and the 21
and the 25 and the 30 and the so on and so forth. Yep.
Better equipped for whatever life may throw at her. Yep. Solving for when we are not here. So that's the goal. That's why we do what we do, how we do, when we do.
Yep. I was going to close with what are our hopes for baby girl, but you pretty much landed the plane right there. So it's true though. We do our best with the life we have, knowing we do not have a crystal ball. We are, people of faith. We believe in our God, and we literally to put one foot in front of the other, and we juggle quite a bit, and we are grateful for His grace and His mercy. And in this season, so far so good. And we really are. I know I sound like a broken record. It truly is one day at a time. Sometimes, depending on the day, it is 1 hour at a time, 15 minutes at a time. But we are we are grateful. And these are just some of the decisions, some of the considerations we make when we're thinking about education.
Yeah. And well, let me say one thing. We didn't come up with this script by ourselves. We leaned on people who have been on this journey, who have 20-something-year-old kids and have engaged with the school system around here far longer than we have. So our decision part of the consideration when we took her out of school, we reached out to folks who had perspective that we didn't have, and that incorporated into our decision-making process. It also incorporated into our decision-making process where we're thinking of bringing her back to school. We reached out to our teacher who had seen her old teacher who is no longer in that position, but she has seen multiple versions of this play out, right?
Yeah.
And she gave us...
Go ahead. She gave us...
She gave us a lot of things to consider. And all of that to say that you can't walk this life alone, even if you don't have, and I'm not talking about the medical ecosystem and what have you, you cannot walk this life alone. And we hope that in some ways, sharing our story is virtually coming alongside you to walk this life and give you a couple of things that you may or may not be considering right now as you make your decision, whatever that decision is.
Alongside these parent mentors, these sages who have been there ahead of us, it's also the very hard life lessons learned from growing up as an older sibling. And sometimes I just wake up and I'm just like, wow, there are so many more resources that my kids are the beneficiaries of that my brother did not have. So now that, and I remember the challenges as he transitioned into adolescence, and I'm very aware of those things. So being proactive is a huge part of who we are, as much as we can be in this situation. So that's huge too. So it's a mix of the parent mentors as well as life lessons from the previous generation, for sure. A mix of the two.
Yeah. Nothing you've been through is wasted. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Anything else?
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time. As always, thank you for listening to the Not Your Mama's Autism podcast on the Alive Podcast Network. If you like what you hear, please share, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast platform you may be listening to this episode on. If you're interested in how this podcast came to be, please check out season 1 of this podcast in its entirety. If you would like to follow us on social media, check us out on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Mama's Autism. If you're interested in booking me for a speaking engagement for your organization or event, please check out Lola Dada-Olley.com. See you soon.
Not Your Mama's Autism podcast is written and produced by my mom, Lola Dada-Olley, and is occasionally produced by me, Bella Olley. My dad and sister also contribute sometimes. Big thanks to Annalie Ackerman for her audio and video editing support. Until next time, everyone, see you soon.